certainly want to share some news today about a couple of topics. We're going to talk about transit in fairly good detail, and then I want to mention recently what Art Dog was able to do, because I think it's a tremendous story for Wichita. But we will start with transit and the critical nature that I've been sharing with this community for several months, and this is what I hope all of you fully appreciate and understand, and we've been talking about this. Starting in January of 2016, transit is going to be $2 million short of the funding that they need, starting in January of 2016. We have to get out to the community now, and this is the start of that dialogue, so that the community can fully appreciate the importance of transit in this community. I have been sharing with everyone that I can that transit is so much more than the transit dependent. Transit's critical to the vitality of Wichita, Kansas, as we try to attract tourisms and conventions and those other opportunities. The number one reason that Kansas City, Kansas lost the GOP convention a year and a half ago is their transit system simply wasn't robust enough to carry people from the hotels to the convention center. We're not on that same level, but transit is critical to those opportunities also. And recognizing that we're going to have the NCAA convention in downtown Wichita, Kansas in 2017, we can't prop transit up just for that convention. The things that need to be in place to have a successful convention need to be in place for the long term for transit to be successful and for this community to be successful. I don't want to tell you that it's all bad news, because there are some good things happening with limited funds with transit right now. As of some late data, transit ridership is up. March compared to the same month in 2014 showed an increase of 4% in ridership, almost 6,000 riders. And the first quarter in total was 3.5% higher than the first quarter a year ago. We have added some new routes out on the west side that we've been experimenting with that gets people where they need to go in terms of doing business, in terms of retail, and we have some new services that allow people to be picked up at their front door and taken to a bus stop. That's been very successful. We're into our 1-year anniversary on that program, and it's increased ridership in West Wichita by 11%. So we have some good news. We also are going to have in our possession here fairly quickly, and Steve Spade's here to answer any tough questions, we're doing a full performance analysis that's already underway. Because as I mentioned, transit's going to be significantly short in funding, and if we can't find a funding mechanism today, transit's going to have to undergo some pretty dramatic changes that Steve Spade is going to lay out for us, doing his analysis that he's been well underway on. We also want that analysis so that we can reach out to the public and get their feedback and their direction. One of the items that we continue to look at, even with limited funds, that can happen regardless of where we take transit, is van pools that can make a difference in this community, and Steve is already looking at an opportunity to do some van pools in this community that both can help neighborhood feeder services and then possibly do some van pools for some park and rides that can change the way that people get back and forth to their employment. But again, I can't stress enough that this community needs to undertake the dialogue of what transit's going to become tomorrow, certainly with limited funds, and what it needs to become to make this community more robust. And that's why we're having this conversation today about Wichita Transit. I want to mention Art Dog because it's pretty special, and it emphasizes the simple fact that we have a very caring community, and it certainly shows in last week's event where they have raised over $1 million for a variety of different groups in this town, including more than $548,000 that was specifically earmarked for the new downtown library opportunity. There were 55 nonprofit art and culture groups that worked together to make that a success. Certainly a number of volunteers. I know that all of the council members were excited and got on board to help raise money, recognizing that those kinds of activities truly make a difference in our community. We think that that's worth recognizing and pretty special. The art and culture industry in this Wichita economy is still a $66 million industry that supports over 2,000 jobs. So to see the kind of significant events that happened this last week certainly are worth mentioning again, and we appreciate the generosity of this community. Again, we appreciate you being here. As I mentioned before, we want to make sure that these press conferences are meaningful and relevant, and there's nothing more meaningful today than the work that this community needs to undertake in terms of a public transportation system. So we appreciate you helping carry that message to the community. And at this point in time, we would ask if you have any questions. If they're really difficult questions, Steve Spade is ready to step up.
What kind of steps are you planning to get input from the community to get some kind of direction?
Certainly, we have plans to do similar community meetings like we have done in the past, where we simply reach out to the community in a variety of different venues. I think we will take what we have learned over the last couple of years and glean from that some of the things that work the best, that include both different mediums, including online, social media, and maybe getting to some groups that maybe we can do a better job of in the future. Here's the thing that helps us with transit. We have an incredibly active and caring transit advisory board that's ready to step up and help promote that dialogue and the message to the community. And these are business leaders from all over the city that will help us change the dynamics of that, including like I said, significant business leaders and some opportunities maybe with Wichita State University with their environment that they're building out there that includes the Innovation Campus. Transit's going to become increasingly more important to them also. Is there anything to add to that, Steve?
You covered it great, unless somebody's got more specific questions.
You mentioned the park and ride as a possibility. Are you talking about maybe in the neighboring communities?
That's
you could drag the people from Goddard Valley Center, that could use it.
That's exactly one of the opportunities that we're pursuing right now, and Steve would be happy to share in more detail. Here's what I know from visiting with Steve and some of the community dialogue that we've already been holding on Park and Ride, and we shared this with a group of individuals that help make up the Regional Economic Area Partners. They're pretty excited about that. Park and rides are one of those opportunities where there's a very specific need to pool a group of folks together and get them from point A to point B, and these opportunities can be pretty financially rewarding because they're pretty simple to cover your cost, and they add to the system. And so there's some credit that we get when we service those folks and those kinds of miles that add to it that will help our revenue stream in different ways in terms of federal funding. And so we think those are great opportunities to expand our system slowly into more of a metropolitan system. Van pools and park and rides are certainly a big part of that.
So how do you convince the population to decide to take these things? I mean, considering Wichita, you can very much get anywhere from point A to point B, you have a car. Because it sounds to me like you need more people to actually ride this, and a lot of people who are riding it who ride it don't have transportation, but it's more of a convincing populations to ditch their cars and take public transportation.
Certainly one of the things that we have to do is expand our transit system and make it more convenient. And so it's a matter of providing the kinds of service that people not only need but require before they're going to be able to take transit. Steve Spade recognizes that, and that's why we have an increase of 11% in West Wichita on ridership, because we're getting people where they want to go. We have to get them not only where they want to go, we need to do it certainly more efficiently than we do it today, and that's going to take dollars. And so to travel from the west side of town to the east side of town without taking multiple transfers, those are the kinds of changes that need to take place. So when we talk about changes for transit and finding money for transit, we're not talking about finding money for transit to operate transit as it operates today. We need to expand transit services so it becomes more of a grid system. We would call it more of a modified grid system, because we're not going to eliminate totally the hub and spoke, but we will have routes that will take you from the east side of town to the west side of town, or the north side of town to the south side of town, and intersect where you can stay on one bus and get all the way across town. And it will provide opportunities for you to travel much more efficiently and timely if you want to get across this city in a different manner. No question that there's transit dependent, but again, transit isn't just for the transit dependent. Transit needs to be for everyone that comes into this community, including the convention and tourism business, and opportunities especially along our major corridor, Douglas, that can totally change the way that Douglas corridor develops.
So you...
Go ahead. What exactly is on the table here in terms of making up the shortfall? I mean, are you looking at more federal money? Is there money that can be shifted elsewhere?
There isn't.
You mentioned business leaders. Is there private, or
Right.
is there a chance at private money going into this, or is it dependent on transit boosting its own revenues?
Yeah, the federal dollars are totally dependent on the miles and the ridership, period. So there isn't additional monies to find there. So we have to figure out how to prop up transit in a different manner in terms of ridership and van pools and those kinds of opportunities are one small way to do that. That certainly can help. But the reality is it's going to take a different funding stream to take care of the transit needs in this community the way that they need to be addressed. And that's the dialogue we need to have with the community. And it can't be a temporary funding stream. It needs to be a permanent funding stream that will allow us to operate transit the way it needs to operate and do the things in this community that we want to accomplish in terms of public transportation.
Does that put a tax increase of some sort on the table?
It is going to put on the table whatever this community fully recognizes the best way to approach this, which means it could be a variety of opportunities that we can look at that Steve is going to share with us eventually as we get this analysis finished. It could be tax increase in some manner or another. It could be a sales tax in some manner or another. But whatever we come up with has to be a permanent solution so that we're not just simply going out there and building a system and then coming back in a couple of years and go, okay, we've gotten this far. Now where do you want us to go? It needs to be a permanent solution that will allow us to operate transit the way that it needs to operate.
Do you guys know who the 11% of people were that actually, do you have stats on them, or who were they?
Would you have any idea of who the 11% increase in West Wichita is and the demographics that might make up?
As part of the performance analysis, we're gathering data on who rides the bus so that we'll have that demographic information. I don't have it right now, but we can provide it as the report information comes in. What we're doing in the performance analysis is trying to take a look at the system as it operates today and figure out, based on data, where the system's doing well and where it could improve so that we can make recommendations on how to best allocate our resources. And there'll be really two things that we can do with it. One, if there aren't additional funds and we have to reduce service, we want to give the mayor and the council really good, thoughtful information about how best to modify the services to live within the budget. But secondly, the document will also tell us where there are things that we can do better and where there are new opportunities for us and ways that we can reinvent the service so that when we do go into a growth mode, then again we'll have the data that we'll be able to grow. The mayor was talking about the West Side service improvements. One thing that proved is that if we provide a decent quality service, we can generate additional ridership. And one of the problems that plagues us is that over the years the service quality has eroded to the point that we could provide so much more value to the community. And so as we increase our level of service and the quality of what we're doing, we attract new riders. The other thing that the mayor mentioned that I think is really important is the outlying communities, our partners. Transportation issues go beyond jurisdictional boundaries, and what's really exciting is that the mayor and council are opening up conversations with other cities for us to talk about our transportation needs as they relate to theirs and theirs as they relate to ours, and how we can work better together to meet some of those things. So.
Trent, go ahead.
I have two questions for you. First of all, I wanted to know when was the last time a performance analysis was done on the bus system or the transit system? And also, can you attribute several things or one thing to why the service quality decreased over the years and what has been, I'm sure you guys have been constantly wanting to make changes, but why?
Well, I think the service, and again, I've only been here a couple of years, but so the mayor and council could probably speak more accurately to that. But the city, my understanding is the city's had financial problems, as have other cities since 2007, 2008, and with declining public revenues to support these services, a lot of us were in kind of a shrinking mode, and so the services naturally kind of shrunk. One of the ways that we could balance the budget without additional revenues is to start taking a look at service cuts. When 90% of what we do relates to putting the bus on the street, so there aren't a lot of things you can do to save money without taking a bus off the street. I can't remember the other part of it.
The last time you guys have done a performance analysis?
There have been a number of studies done. 2008 and 2010, I believe, there were some studies done, one with the University of Kansas, where they took a look at the performance of the system, held a series of public meetings, got input, and then matched up the performance of the system with the public needs, and started to make service recommendations. And what we're doing is taking that a step farther and taking a much more detailed look at the system. These things, normally you'll do a performance analysis every 5 to 6 years, something like that.
Have you guys reached out to the plants where that worker is going to have that set schedule to where, like the Spirits, the Cessnas, and maybe you can establish some kind of where we'd start seeing these buses full, these workers would ride it?
Well, that's a really good question. It's interesting when you look at the system, only about 40% of our trips are work trips, and that tells us that we're missing a key partnership. Most transit systems work trips are about 75% of what you do. And we need to do a better job of reaching out to these businesses and trying to figure out ways that we can better serve them. And again, one of the keys for us is building partnerships. So we need to talk to the business community about what their needs are, and understand that it isn't always them adapting to our big buses running down the streets. And that's why, like the mayor said, the van pool program is so important. A significant portion of people that work in Wichita live outside Wichita, and there are a number of people that live in Wichita that work outside the city. And so another benefit we bring to businesses is giving them a tool they can use to attract more people and serve more employees in a greater geographic area.
Thank you all again for coming, and we hope you continue to share our story, and today is certainly the initiation of that community dialogue to show the urgency and what we need to carry forward. So appreciate you being here.
I have a couple questions. Basically, a status update on the search for a police chief. Any progress, any updates on where that is at this point?
They're putting together the information they need to put out that request for applications. And it's my understanding at the staff level. And so that's been undergoing right now. We've had those discussions with all of the council members, including myself and the firm that they've chosen to help with that search. I know our HR director is here that could fill in any gaps, but I think we're looking at within the next few weeks having that out so that we start receiving applications.
Then I have one other question. There's a tour going on at McConnell right now on an update on the KC-46 facility. What does that mean from your perspective to the Wichita economy to have those planes here?
Well, we've always shared that McConnell is certainly a big part of Wichita, and we appreciate them, and we've lobbied like crazy to make sure that it stays. We think that there's opportunities for McConnell to become and play a more important role in the security of our nation, and so we're looking forward to seeing that play out. But there's no question McConnell's important to Wichita, and I hope people recognize Wichita is important to McConnell. One of the things that I take a lot of pride in is the simple fact that McConnell brings a lot of people to Wichita for the first time, and it's kind of nice to see how many of them have made the decision to retire in Wichita because they love Wichita. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that we have a lot of ex-military folks that made the decision to retire in Wichita, and these folks have traveled all over the world. So we enjoy the relationship we have.